I watched a standard mid-level Rails engineer named Adil get a promotion over a senior engineer who had 8 more years of experience. Adil wasn't a genius. He didn't work weekends. He didn't have a specialized degree in computer science. And honestly, if you looked at their pull requests side by side, the senior engineer wrote cleaner and better code. But 18 months later, the senior engineer was stuck doing legacy maintenance on an old monolithic application, and Adil was leading the new architecture team for the company's flagship microservice migration. Why? Because Adil saw a shift coming that the senior engineer didn't, and we'll call him Tom. Most backend engineers right now are walking around with a false sense of security. I'm telling you right now, that mindset is the fastest track to becoming obsolete. You are likely falling into what I call the implementation trap, which I'm going to cover here in a second. And the worst part is, it feels like productivity until the moment you realize you've been replaced. Let me show you exactly how this trap works and the 3 specific paths you can take to get out of it. So real quick, shout out to today's sponsor, KnowBe4. Are you using the same password for everything? I was, until I got hacked. Twice. First my email, then it was an app. Here's how a password manager saves me and why you need one today. Step 1, download a password manager. There are many to choose from. It's like a vault for all your passwords. High-end encryption. Not even the password manager company can see your passwords. Step 2, create one master password. This is the only password you'll ever need to remember. Make it strong, make it memorable, something only you would know. Step 3, when you register on a new site, your password manager will create the password for you. Every site gets a different password, 30 characters long, random symbols, numbers, and letters. No more password reset emails, no more forgot password clicks. If one site gets breached, your other accounts are still safe. Step 4, next time you log in, you grab your password from your vault. You don't even need to know what your password was. And here's the best part. It works on your phone, laptop, tablet, everywhere. Syncs automatically. Install it once, use it everywhere. One password to rule them all, literally. Follow KnowBe4 for more tips. All right, now to understand why this is happening today, you have to take a look at the history of backend engineering. It follows a specific cycle every 5 to 7 years. I call it the blob. Backend engineering is like a giant blob that slowly absorbs everything around it. A skill that used to be specialized, high-paying job for someone else eventually becomes just a bullet point on the backend engineering resume. Let's go back to 2010. If you wanted to deploy a scalable application, you had to hire an on-prem server guy. They managed physical servers, they configured networking, they dealt with racking and stacking, if you will. Then the cloud came. AWS EC2 became the standard. Suddenly, the backend engineer was expected to spin up their own instances. The server guy role didn't vanish, but it did shrink. Then came the big one, 2015, the rise of the DevOps. I remember this vividly. In 2015, DevOps engineering was a hot new title. Companies were hiring specialized teams just to write chef scripts and manage Puppet configurations. And, handle deployments. These people made 6-figure salaries just to ensure the code moved from your laptop to production. But by 2019, something shifted. DevOps wasn't disappearing. It was being absorbed. Backend engineers started learning Docker. Then we started learning Kubernetes. Then we started writing our own GitHub action pipelines. Companies would look at their budgets and, be like, why are we paying a dedicated DevOps team when we could have a couple senior backend engineers to handle this? And now there are still companies that have their own dedicated DevOps, but a lot of companies, they are now merged into backend engineers. The expectations have shifted that senior backend engineers need to be able to know how to do CI/CD. They need to be able to do ops. If you don't know how to do that thing, there's a lot of companies that won't hire you. The engineers who learned Docker on spent weekends learning it, the ones who figured out Kubernetes, they thrived. They slowly became architects because if you want to be an architect, you need to know all of that stuff. The engineers who refused, who said, I just write Java, I don't do infrastructure, they ended up struggling a bit, right? They got maybe stuck maintaining legacy on-prem systems while the industry moved to the cloud. So right now, going into 2026, we are in the middle of the next massive absorption cycle. But this one's a bit different. It's more dangerous, if you will, because it's harder to see. This time it's AI. But here's the nonce that 90% of all the backend engineers miss. There isn't just one shift happening. There's actually two separate shifts happening right now, and they're more like expansions that are happening simultaneously. Expansion one, which is AI as a productivity baseline. This is using tools like GitHub Copilot, Cursor, Cloud Code, and Gemini to really be able to accelerate your software development. This is where most people stop. You start using Cursor, you might notice you're coding 40% faster, and you think, great, I'm fully adopted into using AI. No, you haven't adopted. The floor has just raised. Think about it economically. If every engineer has access to these tools, and every engineer's efficiency or productivity increases by 20 to 40%, being fast is no longer like your competitive advantage. It is the new baselines, and it's the new zero. It's the new expectation. If you are just using AI to write the same CRUD APIs faster, you're competing in a race to the bottom. Because eventually, fast implementation becomes the commodity, and commodities get priced cheap. However, there's also expansion 2 happening now, which is called AI engineering as a specialization. This is a part that many people are ignoring. This isn't using AI to code. This is coding AI into products. This is building agentic workflows. This is building RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. This is understanding vector databases. This is knowing how to evaluate LLM outputs deterministically. This is a completely new discipline. It's the DevOps of 2026. It is a massive, complex, high-value skill set that didn't exist 5 years ago. And just like DevOps, backend engineering is starting to absorb it. This brings us back to the story of Adil and Tom. I want to break down exactly what happened because the details do matter. The company they worked for was a monolithic Rails shop. They needed to migrate their core billing engine to a microservice architecture using Go. Tom was the senior engineer, 10 years of experience, the Ruby expert on the team. He knew every quirk of the active record ORM. He was the quote-unquote, go-to guy. Adil was a mid-level dev, 2 to 5 years of experience, good but not great. When the migration project started, Tom approached it the traditional way. Before he dove in, he really wanted to master Go, be proficient at Go. He bought a book on Go. He spent 3 weeks reading documentation and diving into this book. He wanted to understand, how the memory model worked and the garbage collector before he wrote a single line of business logic, which is really good in some practices. There's honor in that. It's how we were all taught to learn. But the business needed the billing engine to be moved fast and needed it now. Adil took a different approach. Adil didn't know Go, but he knew how to build software, right? He understood architecture. He knew what the system needed. It needed to consume messages from a Kafka topic, process a transaction, and update a Postgres database with idempotency. He understood the concepts of software development. He just lacked the syntax on how to use Go for it. So Adil used AI as the bridge. He opened up Claude or whatever LLM he was using and said, I need to write a Go service that consumes from this Kafka topic. Here's a JSON schema of the event, create a struct for this event, and scaffold a consumer using the library. The AI spit out the boilerplate, right? 100 lines of code. But this is not an AI fixes everything story. Because here is the critical moment. This is where the copy-paste trap happens. A bad engineer, right, would just paste that code and run it. If it worked, great. If it failed, they'd be stuck. But you don't want your billing engine to fail, right? You need to make sure that everything is good to go. So Adil didn't do that. He read the code, he saw the Go function from the Go code, and realized that Go handles concurrency using a Go routine. He saw the channel syntax. He used AI to teach him the language while he built the product. He asked the AI questions, right? The AI would explain it. The point I'm trying to make is that he learned while shipping. In 3 days, Adil had a working prototype of the billing consumer. It wasn't perfect, but he also was able to use AI to get the prototype going, was able to handle the happy path while learning from AI, while Tom, after day 3, was still on chapter 4 of his Go book. Long story short, Adil got the lead on the next project, and Tom was assigned to maintain the old Ruby code because he knew it best and was not learning Go fast enough. Now, I do have to pause here. I'm not going to tell you to blindly copy-paste code. There's a terrifying trend I see with junior engineers right now. They generate 500 lines of code, paste it into a PR, and push it. The tests pass, the feature works, but when I ask them during code reviews, why'd you choose this library, or why'd you do this trade-off, or, how does this handle error retries? They simply stare blankly. They say, well, I don't know. AI wrote it. If you do this, you're not an engineer. You are a liability. You are a tech debt with a heartbeat. Adil won because he used AI to skip the syntax, not skip the understanding. He focused his brain power on the architecture. He focused his brain power on the Kafka, the idempotency, the database locking, and let the AI handle all the semicolons and brackets. That is the difference. Good engineers use AI to move up the abstraction ladder. Bad engineers use AI to hide their lack of knowledge. So where do you stand? The industry is splitting right now. Backend engineering has fractured into 4 distinct categories. I want you to mentally place yourself in one of these 4 boxes right now and be honest, because you need to know which quadrant you are so you are able to break free. Now, quadrant 1 is the implementation trap. This is where 70% of backend engineers are today. You spend your day picking up Jira tickets. The ticket says add a field to the user API. You go to the controller, you add the field, you go to the model, you add the field, you write a test, you push the change, and you're using AI tools to do this faster. This quadrant is the highest risk zone because adding a field is a commodity task. AI can do it very well. If your entire proposition is I can translate requirements into code, you are competing on pure speed, and there's always someone younger, cheaper, or an AI agent that can do it faster. You need to get out of this box. Now, quadrant 2 is the AI product engineer. This is the new gold rush. These engineers aren't just building APIs, they are building the brain of the company. They are figuring out how to chain LLMs together to solve complex reasoning tasks. They are dealing with non-deterministic testing. They are optimizing for latency and for streaming tokens. And that the reality of this right now is that the supply is low and demand is insane. If you are here, you're safe for at least the next 5 to 7 years. Then there's quadrant 3, which is the domain specialist. These are the engineers who know the business better than the product managers. Think of a healthcare engineer who knows the FHIR standard inside and out. AI can write the Python code, but AI cannot tell you if that specific implementation violates a subtle, SOC regulation regarding trade execution. If you have a deep domain knowledge, you're good. You use AI to code faster, but you get paid for what you know. Then there's quadrant 4, which is a systems architect. This is the Tom redemption arc. These engineers make the expensive decisions. Should we use MongoDB? Should we use Postgres for the access pattern? How do we handle multi-region failover? Currently, AI is not good at this. AI lacks the context of your specific organization, your legacy constraints, your budget, and it can write a function, but it can't design a system that survives large traffic. So what's the solution here, right? There are 3 paths to be able to break out of the implementation trap, because standing still is not an option. You can't just keep doing what I've always been doing, or you're going to end up like Tom. And it ends eventually in being obsolete. So here are the 3 concrete paths that you can start tomorrow. Path 1 is the Adil path, which is speed plus architecture. This is mostly for generalists. The strategy here is to use AI to crush the boring work. If a CRUD ticket usually takes you 4 hours in the past, you can now use AI to make it 1 hour. The future goal for this path is to be able to start proving your application. Be able to be like, hey, I noticed that the API latency is slowing down here. Maybe we want to implement a read replica, or learn system design, learn distributed systems. Become the person who designs a solution, not the guy who just types it out. Path 2 is a specialist, which is AI plus engineering. This is for the people who love new tech. The strategy is to stop building standard REST APIs or whatever and start building AI features. Become the AI feature guy. The tech is to go learn something like LangChain or Pydantic AI, spin up a MongoDB RAG vector database, and build a RAG pipeline that actually works. It's a lot harder than it seems, but once you start doing it, you start understanding the design to be able to do that. Be the person in the company who knows how to integrate LLMs into a product. That is now being called the AI engineer, and it's becoming a huge, huge, huge topic, and it's becoming high in demand right now. Be the person in the room that can answer the LLM integration questions. Then there's path 3, which would be the deep knowledge person. This is the people who like stability and they like complexity. The strategy here is to pick the hardest, messiest, most critical part of your company's business. The part everyone is scared to touch right now. Be the guy who's able to touch the payment engine, the ledger, the compliance reporting. It might be boring tech. It might be COBOL or, Java 1.5 or something, but combine that with deep business logic and mastery and you'll be in a good spot. The goal is to become indispensable because you hold the context that the AI that's training data doesn't know or doesn't have and can't get because it's the business logic of your company. The engineers who learned Docker early in 2015 didn't struggle when the industry shifted. They were the ones leading projects. They were the ones leading teams or creating pipelines and being able to deploy applications. The engineers who learned Git early in 2010 didn't struggle when SVN died. They're the ones setting up new workflows and new repositories and teaching people on how to use the terminal for, code repositories. We are currently in that window right now for AI. You have a choice. You can be Tom, proud, rigid, and slowly becoming obsolete, or you can be Adil, pragmatic, adaptive, and moving up the value chain. The AI tools are not coming to replace you. The tool is coming to leverage you, but only if you're standing on the right side of the lever. I want you to leave a comment below. Be honest about which of those 4 quadrants you are in right now. And think about it. What path are you going to take to get out? I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.